Welcome to Unvelar. Somewhere in this century, a child will be born who will never see a blue sky, never feel the cool touch of real rain, never stand barefoot on Earth's grass. That child will look up at a sky that is black at noon, breathe air built by machines, and call another world home. This isn't science fiction anymore. Space agencies, billionaires, and entire nations are racing right now to build permanent human settlements beyond Earth. Some believe it's our only chance at survival. Others warn it could go catastrophically wrong. But one question haunts every scientist working on this dream. If we finally leave Earth for good, will we still be human when we arrive? The answer is closer than you think, and it begins with a warning nobody wanted to hear. Earth has given us everything, but it's fragile, a single planet spinning through a universe of asteroids and solar storms. Scientists call it the single point of failure problem. If something catastrophic struck, we'd have nowhere else to go. That's why space agencies aren't just dreaming of adventure. They see colonies as insurance for our species. NASA, SpaceX, and others are already designing habitats for the Moon and Mars. This isn't only about survival, it's about our destiny, becoming a species that lives on more than one world. To see how close we are, we must go back to where the dream began, with a teacher who imagined it all before we even left the ground. In 1895, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky sat in a small wooden house and calculated the mathematics of leaving Earth. He described multi-stage rockets and space stations, ideas mocked as fantasy. He had no funding, no laboratory. Yet his equations guide every rocket launched today. Later, Gerard O'Neill proposed massive cylindrical space colonies. These were miles long, spinning to simulate gravity, housing thousands with rivers and forests inside metal shells. Two lifeless, silent worlds. One just days away, one a lifetime away, would soon become our first targets. And one of them was already staring at us every single night. NASA's Artemis program isn't just about footprints, it's about foundations. We are building a permanent presence at the Moon's south pole where billions of tons of water ice lie frozen in eternal shadow. This ice is our lifeline: drinking water, oxygen, and rocket fuel. We are 3D printing habitats from lunar regolith itself to shield against deadly radiation. It's brutal and unforgiving, but the Moon is our vital testing ground. Because the real prize was never the Moon. It was the reddish, dust-covered world 140 million miles beyond. A planet that might already be trying to tell us something about its past. Mars wasn't always a frozen desert. Rovers have confirmed dried riverbeds and ancient lake beds, suggesting oceans and a thick atmosphere billions of years ago. Something changed it forever, most likely the loss of its magnetic field, allowing solar winds to strip away the atmosphere over millions of years. Today, it's a radiation-blasted graveyard where temperatures plunge to minus 80 degrees Celsius and dust storms can swallow the entire planet for weeks. And yet, Mars remains our strongest candidate for colonization. Why? Because it offers enough gravity and resources to make survival theoretically possible. But surviving there requires solving a problem engineers still haven't fully cracked. From oxygen production to radiation shielding, the hurdles are immense. Mars is a world that remembers its past and perhaps one that holds our future. We just have to be ready for it. Imagine building a city where the outside air will kill you in under 2 minutes. That's the real challenge of Mars colonization. Engineers are designing sealed habitats using materials like reinforced regolith and radiation-shielded glass. Greenhouses recycle carbon dioxide into oxygen using genetically optimized plants and algae. Every drop of water must be reused almost perfectly, because resupply missions from Earth could take years and cost fortunes. But even if we solve the engineering, there's a challenge no machine can fix: the human mind, isolated for years, staring at the same red horizon. That psychological unknown may be more dangerous than Mars's toxic atmosphere. NASA psychologists call it the third quarter phenomenon, a dangerous dip in morale hitting astronauts two-thirds through long isolation. Imagine that isolation lasting years on Mars, where messages take 22 minutes one way, no real-time connection, just silence, distance, and delay. Studies from simulated Mars missions reveal rising anxiety and conflict. Some experts even question if colonies could develop entirely new social structures. Could a Martian colony one day declare independence? Experts are already debating the high-stakes legalities of who owns Martian land and who would govern the first humans born there. Someday, human colonists won't just visit Mars, they'll be born there, and that birth may be humanity's strangest unsolved mystery in space. No human has ever been born beyond Earth, not once. Scientists still don't know what would happen to a developing fetus in reduced gravity for 9 months. Animal studies in orbit show abnormal bone development and muscle changes caused by microgravity. On Mars, at just 38% gravity, children could grow taller and develop different bone densities. They could adapt physically, separating them biologically from Earth-born humans within generations. It sounds like science fiction, but ethicists are debating it today. Without understanding these risks, we could create a generation unable to survive on Earth. Reproduction in space is now an ethical question, one that changes everything we know about human evolution. Evolutionary biologists warn that isolated colonies could experience genetic drift, small biological changes accumulating over generations. Combine lower gravity, different radiation exposure, and a completely artificial environment, and Mars-born humans could look distinctly different. They could be taller, more slender, with denser lung capacity adapted to recycled air. This remains theoretical, but it forces an uncomfortable question. If humanity spreads across multiple worlds, will we still be one species in 1,000 years? Or will Earth and Mars produce two branches? It's a haunting thought, but also why colonizing multiple locations is key. The boldest concept isn't a red desert at all, it's man-made. We are at the dawn of a new era, where our survival might depend on being more than just one world species. Mars is only the beginning. Forget domes on dusty planets. Some scientists believe our true future lies in massive rotating space colonies first imagined by physicist Gerard O'Neill in the 1970s. Picture a cylinder several miles long, spinning slowly enough to create artificial gravity through centrifugal force, with sunlight reflected inside using giant mirrors. Inside, there could be rivers, forests, towns, even weather, an entire artificial Earth floating permanently in space. Unlike Mars, these colonies wouldn't be trapped at the bottom of a gravity well, making it easier to travel, mine resources from asteroids, and build multiple colonies simultaneously. NASA studied these designs seriously during the 1970s energy crisis, and modern engineers, including some funded by private space companies, have revisited these blueprints using modern material science. Some proposals even suggest positioning these colonies near Earth's Lagrange points, gravitational balance points where objects can remain stable indefinitely. It sounds impossible until you realize the raw materials to build these giants might already be floating silently nearby, waiting to be mined. Some asteroids contain more rare metals than have ever been mined in human history, resources potentially worth trillions of dollars. Missions have already confirmed the presence of valuable metals and water ice, which could be converted into rocket fuel in space itself. This changes everything. Instead of launching from Earth at enormous cost, future colonies could mine and build directly in space. Some engineers even propose redirecting asteroids into stable orbits, turning them into raw material depots for constructing massive rotating colonies. While theoretical, the economics could make space construction cheaper than Earth-based manufacturing. Humanity wouldn't just be visiting space, we'd be industrializing it. But one obstacle remains that no amount of asteroid metal can solve: the sheer, merciless distance of space itself. Mars is close, the stars are not. Even our neighbor, Alpha Centauri, is 4 light years away. A journey that would take tens of thousands of years. Scientists propose generation ships where no single crew member reaches the destination. Entire generations would be born, live, and die aboard the ship, with only their descendants finally arriving centuries later. It raises unsettling ethical questions. Is it fair to create people whose entire lives and deaths would happen inside a metal vessel for a destination they'll never personally see? Other scientists focus on icy moons like Europa or Titan with vast oceans that might harbor life. Space colonization isn't one destination, it's a network of worlds. The future of space colonization isn't a single destination, it's an expanding network of worlds. Which means the real question isn't if we'll colonize space, but how we'll choose to do it responsibly. Bring it all together and a clear picture emerges. The moon becomes our training ground, close, testable, and resource-rich with ice for fuel. Mars becomes our first true settlement, scientifically our best planetary option. Rotating space colonies become our long-term expansion, free from gravity wells, built using asteroid resources mined from space. Distant icy moons remain our next frontier, possibly hiding the first alien life we ever confirm. None of this happens instantly. Radiation, isolation, and economics remain unsolved puzzles. But for the first time, multiple agencies and private companies are making permanent life beyond Earth achievable this century, not as fantasy, but as engineering and policy actively developed today. The dream that began with equations scribbled by candlelight has become humanity's next great migration. But the biggest question was never really about rockets, habitats, or Mars soil at all. The question was never really about surviving on Mars, or building cities on the moon, or spinning giant metal worlds among the stars. It was always about who we choose to become when Earth is no longer our only home. Will we carry forward our compassion, our curiosity, our capacity to protect one another, or only our conflicts and mistakes? Somewhere, right now, engineers are testing habitats in deserts, biologists are studying gravity's effect on bone density, and children are watching rocket launches, dreaming of skies that aren't blue. The child we imagined at the very beginning, born beneath an alien sky, breathing air built by human hands, isn't a distant fantasy anymore. They may already be alive today, waiting for the day their world becomes real. The future of space colonies isn't really about leaving Earth behind. It's about carrying humanity forward. And whether you'll witness it or your descendants will, our story was never meant to end on just one planet. Thank you for watching Unvelar.